bars in a rave. Man, I go hard, less than 10.
This week's episode of KOP and Fracas, proudly part of the TOUCHLINE FRACAS network. I am your host, Christian, and this week we are thankful to have another special guest. Please welcome Chris Williams.
Hello.
How you doing, Chris?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, very good.
Oh, brilliant. I am also joined this week by Mark.
Yo, what's good? How's everyone doing?
All good, fun. I'm also joined by Joe. Guys, all good, giving us a thumbs up there. And finally, I'm joined by Peter.
Hello, everyone. What's good? I'm happy to be here, as always.
Oh, good to have you on. So, Chris, we've got a few questions for you. Thank you to have you on. So, Peter, I don't know if you want to lead us off with...
Yeah, so I'll just start basically just because I've studied journalism, so I've got a background in it. I studied sports journalism as a degree. I graduated that last year. Is your background similar to me, or how did you get into journalism and covering sports and sports in Germany and football?
No, you are way more qualified than me because I've not got a degree in journalism. So I started, we're going to show me age here. I started way back in the mid-90s before the internet was even a thing. I did music journalism when I was back home in Liverpool at the time. I did that for 2-3 years, but there was no internet. So you either worked at a newspaper or you didn't work. That's pretty much it. So went different career path and then came back to it in about 2010 and then went properly into it 2015. And yeah, I've been very lucky to meet the right people at the right time. I'm fully qualified journalist. I studied journalism in college, but I don't have a degree in it. But now, through working for different companies, etc., I've got all the press passes and accreditations needed to cover football, which is obviously something that's really good because I was able to take a hobby into a profession.
I know, that is awesome. So yeah, I think the music part of that is quite interesting. So who did you primarily cover back in the 90s? Anyone exciting?
Oh, so yeah, there was just an explosion of music. So there was all like guitar bands, Shed 7, Oasis, Blur, Cast, The Farm. Obviously living in the Northwest, there was loads of bands. And then it was just at that time when super clubs were exploding. So there was the Paul Oakenfold at Cream, but there was Gatecrasher. So yeah, there was quite a lot of stuff. It's quite cool because I just used to flash my press card and get in for free, which was pretty cool. But I still had to do some work for it. But yeah, it was a nice time. Probably couldn't do it again. I'm too old now. Don't have the hair. Used to have a good mop of hair as well. Don't have that anymore.
So how do you find the difference between obviously being a Liverpool fan, covering Bundesliga as opposed to covering Premier League?
Yeah, so it allows me to cover it. I would say it allows me to cover it fairly, so I don't have any preconceptions. I do cover Liverpool. I was assigned Jurgen Klopp's German, an ex-Bundesliga coach, so I was assigned Jurgen Klopp's journey at Liverpool once he arrived. So that was a pretty cool thing to be able to do. But it just allows me to be more objective when I'm looking at two teams play. I do have a couple of teams I like, so I really like watching Dortmund, and I love the club and I love the city and I love the people. It's a really nice area in Germany. But I also like Union Berlin. I like going to Berlin. It's such a mix of all different nations and cultures. It's probably one of my favourite cities on earth. So I do like to be able to cover those teams, but I can do it. I can do it objectively. If they get beat 4-0, doesn't really bother me. But for instance, when I went to the Atletico Madrid-Liverpool game, both legs, I had to cover that objectively, but inside, obviously, I'm fuming. But you can't. You've got to report on it fairly. You can't let your emotions get in the way. And I think that's probably the only issue I have if I'm covering Liverpool. Especially with the time balance. So if I'm doing a match report, it needs to be out inside 5 minutes after the final whistle. So you've got to write your thoughts as you go. I suppose it lets you process them. And I find that since I've been writing about Liverpool, I no longer have any problems should they get beat, which is a very rare thing these days anyway. But if they do get beat, I've got most of my frustrations out and then edited it, so it sounds a lot nicer.
Yeah. So how much of a downer, I guess, is kind of like obviously doing your match report, you've got to have that written up by about 85th, 90th minute, kind of the outline and what you want to talk about. So how kind of devastating is a last minute winner or a last minute equaliser in regards to that?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not too bad actually, because you start to process your report as you go through. So the very last thing to write is my introduction paragraph and my conclusion paragraph. The body of it pretty much writes itself. So you'll have maybe 250 words on the first half, 250 words on the second half. And then the only thing you need to change is the first and last paragraph, should there be an early or late goal. However, if it's a real dull 0-0, and this has happened in Germany where it's been a 0-0 and it's ended 3-3 in the 97th minute, that can be a bit of a problem. But I'd never complain about it because I get to sit and watch football and get paid for it, so it's a joy.
I was trying to ask a question. Why did you choose like the Bundesliga and not the Premier League to cover on, or was it just a chance, or how did you end up working on Bundesliga?
Yeah, it's a great question. So show me age again. So years and years ago when Sky first started, there was only, I think, 3 channels. There was Sky Movies, Sky Sport and Sky News. That was it. And it used to be on the same satellite as Italian television, French television. And there used to be a channel in Germany called DSF, and they used to broadcast live games on at 3 o'clock. So it was an easy way of watching live football. Obviously, because you can't watch 3 o'clocks in this country, or in the UK, sorry, can't watch 3 o'clocks live. You know, people get it all around the world. But in the UK, there's a 3 p.m. blackout. So if I wasn't at the match watching Liverpool, because I only lived around the corner at the time, if they were away and I hadn't gone to that away match, I could watch German football. So it just sort of stuck with there. And I think the Premier League is such a saturated area for coverage. I mean,
Yeah,
not just in the UK, but I mean, I know I've met people from all over the globe, online or in person, that cover Liverpool, from like the smallest countries in the world to the biggest countries in the world. Everybody's got an opinion, which is absolutely fantastic. No problem with it whatsoever. But it does make the marketplace a bit crowded. So I had a passion in German football, so I just specialised in it, really.
Oh, awesome. I think just want to touch back on the point you made about one of your favourite teams being Dortmund, and how eloquently you spoke about kind of the football club and the people in the city. Do you see a similarity between Liverpool and Dortmund in terms of the place and the football club?
Yeah, I mean, yes, that would be an easy thing to say, but it's reflective of anywhere. So, you know, Dortmund's a working class area, and Dortmund's a working class club. So it doesn't matter if you're from Liverpool or you're from London or you're from Birmingham or you're from Manchester. You know, if you're from a big city and you're used to going out and working hard 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and you just want to let off steam by watching a little bit of football, that's pretty much that whole area of Germany. So, you know, you can include Cologne, Schalke, Leverkusen. You know, it's an industrial heartland area. So, but I always found that Dortmund fans are really nice and really welcoming. So when I go over, I don't just land, go to the stadium and go home. I normally spend a night there, and I'll get there to the stadium early, speak to fans outside, get a feeling how they're thinking about the days going. There's a lovely pub which turns into a nightclub that's attached to the stadium. I go in there before and after the match, or before and after a finished work, I should say, probably working till about an hour and a half after the full-time whistle. But the pub's still packed when you go in, and the people are always welcoming. And the only problem is everybody wants to test their English, so my German's not improving that much, because people can soon pick up on my accent that I'm not German, and they want to test their English. So that's the only downside, I think, about it.
Seeing that you have been around Dortmund so much, do you feel like Klopp has been able to replicate the same culture that he had at Dortmund at Liverpool?
Yeah, most definitely. So, but Dortmund are historically a good side. They've won the Bundesliga, they've won the Champions League just before the turn of the century. They've won the DFB Pokal, German FA Cup, a lot as well, and a number of times. And the old Super Cup, they do well in Europe season in, season out. But Jurgen Klopp took them from occasionals to, you know, back-to-back winners, double winners, Champions League finalists, the first time they'd had it in the new century. And he brought a winning mentality, and everything he's done at Liverpool, he did at Borussia Dortmund. And to be fair to him, he did at Mainz before that as well. You know, took them up the division. Okay, they got relegated, but he took Mainz was an area that really didn't care about football. Very small town football team was just something that happened. And after he left, like everybody in Mainz was a football fan after that. So he did turn the city around. He turned Dortmund around, and obviously what he's done at Liverpool, taking Liverpool from, I wouldn't even say they were nearly men at times, had really good season under Brendan Rodgers, but he's turned them into world and European champions, and you can't ask any more than that. And I think that's a real problem for Dortmund, because his ghost haunts that club and will do until they can find a manager who can replace him. And unfortunately for them, they haven't been able to do that.
So 2 quick questions on the back of that. What do you think Jurgen Klopp's next step is? This is basically a straightforward answer, but what do you think Jurgen Klopp's next step is with Liverpool? How does he increase our global presence? What does he do moving forward? And also, what do you feel like we should do to not be in the Dortmund shadow in terms of Jurgen Klopp leaving and us having that void to fill?
Yeah, I don't even want to think about Jurgen Klopp leaving. It can always make me cry or bang my head in frustration. And I do that because I've seen what's happened to Dortmund, and it's almost, it would be like watching a car crash happen in slow motion for me. And I'd hate it because obviously Liverpool's my club. So, I mean, what can he do? He does what he does very well. He reinvents his side. So, I mean, God forbid, if just to say we were to get rid of the front three, the Firmino, Salah, and Mane, let's just say they all left at the same time, I would have no worries that Jurgen Klopp will be able to rebuild that front three. So he does that. He rebuilds. He will take a club through an evolution. Although he's got the spine now for that team to work for the next 6, 7, 8 seasons potentially, especially with the youth players like Alexander-Arnold and Curtis Jones, etc. He's bringing those players through. But
and Naby Keita, by the way.
Yeah, and Naby Keita. Yeah. I know we're going to get onto Naby Keita, so I've saved him in my back pocket for a bit because he's one of my favourite players that I've seen live in Germany.
Nice to hear that.
And I'm just waiting. I'm waiting to see him come to life in a Liverpool shirt.
You know what? Let's not delay that conversation.
Okay, yeah, let's go
straight into it because he's a hot topic of contention for in our group chats and on podcasts.
Well, he shouldn't be, but yeah.
So it's more. I think it's more to do because I mean, it's like you said, we saw the electric player that was at Salzburg and Leipzig. It's just obviously due to injuries. Frustrating injuries as well, just not being able to replicate on the pitch. But then you see videos like the training session that came out today where he looks completely on the ball. It seems like the rest has done him a lot of good. And hopefully we can see that player going forward. I think it's more just a frustration from us more than anything.
Yeah, shaking your head, Peter.
And the video of him chasing his own pass, I don't believe that's the same player.
I mean, it was a flip, but...
I think we should start with Naby Keita, the man, or the young adult. I've had the joy of meeting him a couple of times, when I was at Leipzig and speaking to him. He's probably one of the nicest guys I've ever met. He's very softly spoken, got a very, very dry sense of humour. He's a real nice lad. I got a great picture of me with him at Chester in his first game in a pre-season, but unfortunately, I think we should call it a very good summer. So it's not particularly a good picture of me. And it's a really good picture of Naby Keita. So I'm hoping I can catch up with him soon for a better picture. But yeah, he's a really nice lad. And the way he played football at Leipzig, especially, Salzburg before, yes. But I mean, I think he really exploded into the Bundesliga with that wonderful first standout season. And that is Naby Keita. And yeah, he has been unlucky. He sort of fell out once he signed that deal with Liverpool and was coming a year later. That pretty much rules you out with a manager. You saw what happened to Emre Can when he said he wanted to leave, which is not a problem. But all of a sudden, you don't become part of the boss's plans because he's looking for someone to replace you, and that's been a mixture of Campbell and Konrad Laimer at Leipzig, who are playing very well now. So, and when Naby Keita came to Liverpool, I think he started really well, but then he picked up a couple of injuries that didn't help. It started at first. I think he slept funny on the plane on the way to I think it was America at the time, had a bad neck. And footballers are like high-tuned race cars. If your exhaust starts to go, it'll affect the other part of your engine. So he picked up a few injuries quite quickly. And then he got back from that. I thought he played really well against Manchester United. And I think he got kneed in the leg and the hip at the same time, which caused him a few issues. And then he had his problems at Napoli away. And then he was getting into a really, really good vein of form. And then he was injured before the Champions League final. And then, of course, we had all this problem with the national side, with Guinea, where he was taken away, where he wasn't 100% fit. And he's the captain and he's a pin-up. He is like the main player for that team. And they couldn't have gone into that championship without him. So he was almost forced to play. And I heard a lot of people, especially on social media, saying, oh, well, he should just not play. Well, unfortunately for footballers, they get paid a lot of money and they have a great life, but they're owned by their own FA. So if he's told to report and he's told to play and he's told to train, he has to do it. And unfortunately, that didn't help him at all. But I mean, the footage as we record this today on Monday of him training, he looked really sharp and really fit. And that's Naby Keita that I saw at Leipzig for 18, 24 months.
Chris, I've got a question I want to ask you. So I'll give you a bit of context. So I started following you just around the during the development of the Naby Keita saga.
Okay, yeah.
And I think one of the reasons why I started following you, because you seemed to, I think you was on the ball around, the transfer and what was going on, the ins and outs. And I think everyone was I think they were in dialogue with Sega Diallo. I think he is the correspondent back
who's another really nice lad. Met him at PSG. Real nice, real competent, very hard-working journalist. I think a lot of people just see him as some guy on Twitter, but he's not. He's a real good guy. But yeah, carry on.
Yeah, I wanted to pick your brains on that whole Naby. I'd say that timeline from when you found out we were interested, and then all the way through to that infamous tackle in training, all the way down to him, finally signing. What was your general thoughts on that?
So yeah, it was complex. I think we're going to see that, or we are seeing that now with Timo Werner. So it's like a dance where one side's interested, the other side's not selling. One side's no more interested, and the other one might want to sell. And I think Leipzig are a very good establishment of Red Bull. Obviously, Rasenball bought Leipzig because of German sponsorship laws within the country and the league. But they are part of the Red Bull Empire, and the Red Bull Empire does like and publicity. The football teams are a marketing vehicle for the company, as is the Formula One team, as is the jump from space by I think Felix, I can't remember his name, Felix something or other. He jumped from the edge of space, and they've got the X Games, and they do drip information left, right, and centre. Now I got exceptionally burnt at that time I was told that there would be some really exciting news on the Sunday, and that really exciting news was that Naby Keita wasn't going to come. Now I'd put 2 and 2 together and got 5. So that's a warning for anybody on that. And you probably noticed that I've stayed away from transfers now because they can change literally overnight. I mean, I think if you go back to Danny Ward was going to be Liverpool's number 1, and then he was sold, and then 24 hours after Alisson came in, and there have been some real big outlets report that Liverpool weren't interested in Alisson just 2-3 days before. So that's how quickly they change. But yeah, I saw lots of Naby Keita, and once I heard Liverpool were interested, obviously I was very excited as a Liverpool fan because he's an exciting player and offers a lot of speed, and he's very defensively minded as well as attack minded. So yeah, that was a transfer dance and a saga. I think we're looking at a new one with Timo Werner as well.
Just to stick on Naby for one last question. I've heard you say a lot about his skill set and basically heralding him. We were linked to a few other people at the time. So Milinkovic-Savic, Goretzka, and Joseph Seri and Renato Sanchez. In terms of weighing up how Naby's progressed and his skill set in comparison to them, do you feel like we've got a better player?
I mean, you can only go on results at the moment, and to say I'd be a little disappointed would not be. I'm not disappointed in Naby Keita. I'm disappointed in the scenario that's been around him with his injuries, etc. So I've got Renato Sanchez is a great player. Leon Goretzka is a wonderful player.
Yeah, I think he's really stepped up this season for Bayern.
Yeah, and you can look at how those players have played and think, oh, Liverpool really missed out there. But I've said it. Probably sound like a broken record now, but once Naby Keita gets into the right vein of form, everybody's going to be like, oh, okay, that's why Liverpool went after him so much.
Well, Mr. Mark here has a bold prediction for Adam Lallana and Naby Keita in terms of goal return. So he needs to hope that Keita gets a little bit fit soon.
Yeah, I was saying 10 goals, 10 assists between the both of them. I think they're on 2 and 2 at the moment. But based on the training videos at the moment, we could see Naby getting maybe 5 assists towards the end of the season. Hopefully, anyway.
Quickly, Chris, do you think Naby's body's able to hold up with Klopp's system of like intense pressing, like the physicality of his, like, do you actually think his body's able to hold up in that system? Or do you think
it's a real good question, because that's something that was leveraged at Daniel Sturridge for a bit, where he's a wonderful footballer, but is his ankles made of glass? That was a question. And I think Naby Keita's used to Leipzig play a very high pressing system, and under Ralph Hasenhüttl at the time. They play high-tempoed football. I think the Premier League is a little bit more robust in. I think the challenges can be a little bit more physical. That's not to say German football isn't physical, but I think the Premier League can be just a little bit more physical. And that's something that I don't think he's got used to yet. But then he's had all these problems with injuries as well, which I think if he got that rest, if he wasn't pushed by the national side to play in that tournament at the time, I think we would have seen a lot better from him. But
Yeah.
I think unfortunately it was that. But I do think his body can handle it. I just think he's had a really, really unfortunate run of form. I do worry a little bit for him because if he can't find that form, then Liverpool will eventually say at some point, how enough is enough. And I wouldn't like to see that because he's such a good player. But yeah, I think his body is up to it. He just really needs a rest, and hopefully he's had that because he does look pretty good in training.
Just one last point for you. How much truth was there in Barcelona's interest in Naby? From what we read and from some of the reports, they had a last-minute bid rejected, or they had come in at the last minute to try and get a hold of Naby. How much truth to that was to those reports?
Yeah, certainly from people I spoke to in Germany at the time and at Leipzig at the time, Barcelona were very interested. And yeah, they wanted to make a move, but obviously his mind had been set that he wanted to go to Liverpool. So I think even the latest of last-minute bids and offers would have been no good for him. And I think you can sort of see that with Timo Werner a bit as well, because he is such a talented player and there isn't really many other clubs knocking on the door. Same thing happened with Virgil van Dijk as well. I think when a player says publicly, I want to go to Liverpool, or I like the way that Mr. Klopp plays football, I think that sort of puts other managers off because it's like, oh, well, he wants to go there, so there's no point in me going for him. And I think that's why players do it. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, Naby Keita wanted to play for Liverpool. And obviously eventually he got there, which I think is why we saw him get such a big hug at the end of the Champions League final last season, because he was there. But after everything happened, he gets a big hug off Klopp because I think Klopp knows how good he is and what he offers to the side. I mean, because he really went after him. If you look at how public the courting was, if you want to call it that, he's a player that he wants, and he rarely makes mistakes on a player.
So I had a really big smile on my face because Mbappe had said the same thing. So I'm just floating that Mbappe. Liverpool.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of money. I mean, Naby Keita was expensive, but like Mbappe would be mega expensive. Night kit or no night kit.
I was going to say we do need someone to model the night kit.
On what Werner was saying about moving to Liverpool, what do you feel like his views are in terms of the German fans? How do they view him and how do they view his behaviour in terms of saying he wants to move and he wants to go to Liverpool and talking so much about Liverpool? Because I know at times fans can really look down on that behaviour.
Yeah, they can. So I think Timo Werner gets away with it because he's banging the goals in. Like he's played 28 games this season in a 28 games in a Bundesliga over this long-term protracted season. And he's averaging a goal every 96 minutes over those 27, 28 games. So I think you can pretty much say what you want if you're banging the goals in. And Leipzig although they want to become German champions and they've got an eye on winning the Champions League because that's what Red Bull want, I think they're clever enough to know that they can not be a stepping stone, but they can recruit young lads from either smaller clubs in France or maybe a pathway over from Salzburg, and then be a stepping stone to Liverpool or be a stepping stone to Real Madrid or Barcelona, etc. So I think they're aware of that. I think Leipzig fans would be a lot more upset if Timo Werner went to Bayern Munich and then was putting 6 or 7 past them twice a season.
Yeah, there's a long running joke with myself. I remember when Leipzig signed Werner from Stuttgart. I mean, I remember him being one of the hottest prospects in Europe at that time. Even then, I mean, because it was for the fee what it was at the time was still fairly substantial. And I tracked his career a fair bit, and I think he got to the 2018 World Cup, and I was like, I just don't know if he's got it, because I'd have loved him at Liverpool at that time. So I think that's just kind of put me off. But from what I've been seeing recently, I've kind of warmed back up more to the idea, just seeing how he can kind of slot in more for this positional versatility more than anything. Do you think that'll be a massive asset to him if he does end up at Liverpool.
Yeah, because a lot of people have said, "Oh, I don't think he'll come to Liverpool because he's going to spend a lot of time on the bench." Well, Liverpool, once the season comes back, Liverpool win the league. I think it's pretty safe to say that, unless I probably give up watching football if they don't.
Yeah.
But next season, winning the league won't be enough, and winning the Champions League won't be enough. It'll be like, well, Manchester City went and won a treble. Can Liverpool do that? And you can't do that with 12, 13 decent players. You've got to have 16, 17 decent players. So Timo Werner can play. He can play left. And he can play central. So that allows Sadio Mane to have a break, and then it allows Roberto Firmino to have a break, and then it even allows Mohamed Salah to have a break if Mane goes on the right-hand side. And Werner can play on the right. He just prefers to cut in from the left. So I think he would get maybe one rest in every 3 to 4 games, which is probably what a player needs over a full season in order to be firing on all cylinders. The only problem comes if he's a goal scorer and he plays those 3 games and he bangs in 3 hat-tricks. How do you then drop him for someone else coming in? But I mean, that is the problem that every manager in the world wants to have. So I think his versatility would suit Liverpool. I think it'd suit Klopp's system. He's used to high pressing. He's very quick on the transition. He can also drop deep and win the ball back, and then allow players either side of him to drift out wide. So yeah, he would be a perfect fit, which is why everybody has said that. Even the likes of Ralph Ragnick have said that if he was to move, he would benefit going to a system which would fit him, which would be Liverpool.
I was going to say, just in terms of Ragnick, I know there was kind of some bit of discourse between himself and Liverpool when the KA transfer was going on initially. As that relation, he's not notorious as Michel Aulas in terms of dealing with him. Would you say that relationship's a good point between the two parties in terms of if there was a transfer to get done?
Yeah, well, so Ralph Ragnick's moved on now. Although he is still at Red Bull Football, he's in charge of their entire scouting department. So he looks at players in South America, looks at players in North and Central, Western South Africa, and he looks at players to bring into either Salzburg or New York Red Bulls, or he looks at players who can go into Leipzig. So he's not actively involved in Leipzig themselves anymore. But okay. Liverpool and Oliver Mintzlaff and the CEO have got a good working relationship. Obviously, Klopp and Werner's agent have got a good relationship. So, there's things there to be built on. And I mean, you can have a bad relationship, but when you're talking about 55 million euros, I think any relationship can be sorted out quite quickly with that sort of money.
Yeah.
What, if anything, do you think could hinder Werner being a success at Liverpool?
It's a good question. Maybe time to adapt to the Premier League. It is pretty similar to the Bundesliga, although I would say I cover Bundesliga week in, week out, and I love it, and I've done for years. But there's one sensational team in Bayern Munich. I think there's 4 really good teams, and then the rest are not bad. So I think in the Premier League, you've got 6 exceptionally good teams, and the rest aren't bad. I think that's the only thing that could hinder his immediate success. But he's a player who can work it out. He's played international football. He scores at international level. So I think the problem that players have is adapting to new leagues and the pressure that comes with them. Young players as well. And he said there that did Timo Werner have it in him after he moved from Stuttgart? But personally, I don't think players hit their prime till 25, 26. So, until a player gets that. Look at Daniel Sturridge. He's a perfect example. Everybody wrote him off, said he was pretty much useless. And then he came to Liverpool in his prime and had a wonderful couple of seasons until he was injured. Was real glad that he won a Champions League before he left. Yeah. I think that summed his time up there. He needed a trophy just for what he put in that 13-14 season. So I think players need a little bit of time to adapt and remember that they're only young kids at the end of the day. I mean, if you're 18 years old, you're only 2 years older than when you're a 16-year-old boy in essence. So it does take time for players to adapt. Not everyone's going to be Trent Alexander-Arnold or Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo moving away at such a young age and then becoming a world superstar. Everybody takes a little bit of time, and everyone's got a different path.
You kind of segued me into another topic that I want to go into. So speaking of young players, I know you said you watch a lot of Union Berlin. So have you watched a lot of Hertha Berlin? Been able to see Marko Grujic?
Yeah.
How it's been coming along?
Yeah, I like going to Berlin. Obviously, they got two teams there. Yeah, Hertha Berlin, massive stadium, too big for them. But yeah, they've had. I think we could call it a roller coaster. That's probably being nice to them. They've had a strange couple of years with manager changes, head coach changes. They've had supervisory board members come in and out. They've had a guy called Lars Windhorst come in and take pretty much over that club as in the 49% that's available to him. They had the Hollywood scenario of Jurgen Klinsmann coming in, and then they've had this Facebook Live problem, not just with Klinsmann, but with Salomon Kalou going a little bit rogue and filming things that he shouldn't have done. So they've had a strange couple of seasons. But Marko Grujic, I think he played really well in his first season there. He's taken a little bit of time to get going this current season, but then he's had so many different managers to work under. I think this is his fourth manager he's been under now, or his fourth head coach, that he's been working under. So that's going to affect him. I'm probably wondering the question that's going to come next is how would he get on at Liverpool? My only fear for Grujic is that the Liverpool he joined isn't the Liverpool that's now. So remember when he came and then he had that pre-season game against Barcelona at Wembley, which I was at, and he's really good. Liverpool are a completely different animal now. They've got one of the best midfields in the world. They've got one of the best forward lines. They've arguably got the best centre-back and goalkeeper in the world at the minute. Marko Grujic, if he was to come back now, he wouldn't start. And Marko Grujic is good enough to start at a team like Hertha Berlin or at a team, mid-table, mid to top six in the Premier League. I don't think he's a top 4, top 5 team regular starter at the moment, but he's only young himself. It's whether he wants to hang around. Does he want to be third, fourth choice central midfielder when he can play week in, week out at somewhere like Hertha Berlin or Frankfurt? That's a choice that he's going to have to make. But he's talented. But yeah, my only concern for him is that Liverpool were an average side when he joined, and now obviously they're world class, and that's hard for anybody to break in.
From a positional sense with Grujic, where would you see him kind of like fitting in this current midfield setup? Because I don't feel like he's got might be a bit unfair on him, the defensive mind to fill that number 6 role. But I also don't think he's got the attacking prowess in terms of his finishing for more of the attacking midfielder role.
Yeah, we can play in either of those areas. So you play defensive midfielder, central midfielder, or even attacking midfielder if he needed to. It's whether, who's he going to displace at Liverpool? Will he displace the captain, Jordan Henderson? Nope. Will he displace Fabinho? No. Will he displace Gini Wijnaldum? No. Who's he going to displace? Arguably, if James Milner was to leave, he would replace James Milner, but then he doesn't offer the versatility that Milner get. You can't put him at left back, you can't put him at right back, you can't put him up front. He doesn't take exceptional throw-ins. So he would be third, fourth, maybe even fifth choice. I would put him way behind, the current midfield we have. And even behind once Naby Keita is 100% fit, that's another player that'll be in front of him, another player who can play attacking central or defensive midfielder. So it's going to be it's a bit of a Hobson's choice, I think. Does he want to stay on the bench, or does he want to leave arguably one of the best teams in the world at the minute? So it's a real difficult choice for him to make.
Just sticking on that kind of like Bundesliga talent point of view. We all know about the Jadon Sanchos of the world, the Erling Haaland. I think it's more the players kind of like Milot Rashica at Werder Bremen and players of that mould that we have seen Liverpool have a bit of an interest in. Is there any more players that you could go into a little bit more detail about that Liverpool have possibly had scouts at their games or have shown interest in the past, kind of like Julian Brandt, for instance?
Yeah, Brandt's a great player, and obviously he's moved on from Leverkusen to Dortmund now. That was a move that was perfectly made for him to do that. And there's players like Kai Havertz. Obviously, Rashica's a real interesting. Rashica's a real interesting example because I think he was unfairly labelled in the English press that it would be like a poor man's Werner. Well, he can play central attacker a little bit better than Timo Werner, who can play it but doesn't like it. Rashica will play there. He can also play on the left, or he can drop deep. So he does offer something different in a little bit than Timo Werner, but he would require a lot of coaching to be brought up to the standard. And obviously Jurgen Klopp can do that. But it would be like an Andrew Robertson sort of situation where he comes in and isn't ready to start until he learns the system in and out, and then would come in and play really well. That's Liverpool's not problem, but Klopp's built such a good system is that he has to pick players carefully for it. And You know, I personally don't think Liverpool are going to go out and spend 60, 70, 80, 90 million every transfer window because, you know, they've got that spine at the minute. They've got a great goalkeeper. They've got a really good defence pair. And if you bring in Joe Gomez as well, you know, there's a lot of good defenders still at the club. Midfield, I think, is saturated. So I don't think we need any more midfielders personally. And then it's all about how to rotate the front three and get the best out of them. So, yeah, I don't expect many ins and outs from Liverpool for the next couple of seasons until they need to maybe replace all of those spines or parts of that spine. So Rashica would be a good player. I personally think Timo Werner, if Timo Werner was to come to Liverpool, then Liverpool wouldn't need to make a midfield or forward signing for the next 3-4 seasons, which obviously as a business, that makes a lot of sense.
Just a quick question. Oh, yeah, sorry, Mark.
No,
just a quick question. Is there any like talents that we should probably like look out for, just as not even just a Liverpool fan, maybe just as a Premier League fan, that maybe like I'm just thinking of off the cuff, maybe like people like that are not always on the headlines, but people like it's a bit so. I think you said like Nordhaus, or I don't know how you say it, but like yeah, names that we should look out for that could possibly make the switch to the Premier League, but necessarily might not make the headlines. Just any names that we should look out for.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to look at players who could make an impact in the Premier League for any club, I mean, for a big club, for a top six side, they'd have to go shopping at somewhere like Bayern, who don't rarely sell, Dortmund, or Leipzig. Leipzig are just full of real good players. Konrad Leimer's a good central midfielder. Sabitzer, Marcel Sabitzer is wonderful. Mukalele is probably one of the most exciting players that I've seen. I mean, he should win the Bundesliga's Rookie of the Year. That's something that they have each season. He should win that hands down because he's so exciting. I don't know if you saw the game last night against Cologne where, you know, takes the ball wonderfully well, great chip to score. He's also got an assist in his back pocket. He's a really, really, really exciting player. I think he could fit in at Liverpool, Manchester City, Arsenal, Man United, Chelsea.
Is he a right back or a centre back? I think he's a right back.
Mukalele?
Yeah,
more central midfielder, but he can play in a variety of positions. So he's a real talented player again.
Okay.
And that's a good. That's why I think Leipzig are a good fit for Liverpool to go shopping in. I think I read it's either in German or English. Are Leipzig Liverpool's new Southampton because they play, you know, such good football that Liverpool are going to be like, well, he's a good footballer. Well, actually, so's he. And what about their coaches? What about their nutritionists? So what about their doctors? They make a real good fit for Liverpool to just poach all the best players from. So, yeah, keep an eye on Leipzig. I mean, they've just got so many good talents. You know, Haidara as well, who's had problems with injuries. It's good to see him come on last night. He's another really exciting player. But, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of players in the Bundesliga, youth players, but whether they'd be able to make the jump over to the Premier League straight away is, you know, that's a question that I think only can be answered if they were to do it. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Staying on Leipzig players, there was a lot of buzz about Emil Forsberg about 2-3 years ago. Why do you feel like there isn't so much noise around him at this current time? Sorry.
Yeah, so he's not had the best seasons with injuries. I think he was at his very peak at that time that Naby Keita was there. So that first season when they got promoted and they finished second, and pretty much they like blew everybody away apart from Bayern in the Bundesliga. Everybody was like, who are these like new kids on the block, upstarts, only a couple of years old. And Forsberg was one of them. You know, he could have moved to AC Milan at the time, but was told that he wasn't going. And I don't think he's gone off the boil. I just think he's another young player that'll just have ups and downs until he's 26, 27. So he is good, but I think he's another that's been hampered by injuries as well. So I'd expect to see a little bit more from him the back end of this season and the next season, whenever that is.
And in terms of Kyle Havertz, there's been a lot of rumours linking us to Kyle Havertz as well. Who would you see as a better prospect for Liverpool, and who do you think would fit in the team more seamlessly, especially given that Havertz has been playing that false nine role and got quite a lot of goals since the restart of the Bundesliga?
Yeah, I mean, Havertz is such a wonderful talent. He's got a real good understanding of the game, real good reading of the game. He's a grounded lad himself. I mean, he's just a normal lad. He's got no airs and graces about him. You know, he just seems an absolutely normal, down-to-earth lad. So I think he would fit into Liverpool side quite well. You know, he'd probably fit into any of the top three sides quite well. But he's wanted by Bayern. I
Yeah.
sat down and spoke with the CEO of Leverkusen, Fernando Caro, and their sporting director, Simon Rolfers, in December. And they were quite adamant that he's not going to leave on the cheap. He's still got 2 years left on his contract. So I think Bayern have said that they can't afford him at the minute. Now, that might just be a little bit of mind games. But yeah, I mean, he would cost... They value him in the region of 100 million euros. I think you'd be lucky to see him get sold for anything less than 75, 80 at the minute, coronavirus problems or not.
It's funny you said that, because obviously there was a report, I think it was yesterday or the day before, in regards to Manchester United having an interest in Kai, and they were hoping he's getting for £50 million.
Yeah, no chance.
Which is like absolutely no chance.
Buy one leg for that.
Probably not even that. You probably get.
So if you want to play him with one leg, he's probably a great buy at £50 million.
I mean, I think we're all massive fans of Kai Havertz in our group chat, and we've been watching him for a while. And he's one. If someone, I think the only situation where he would possibly arrive at Liverpool at the moment is if one of the front three or a key player were to move on, which is a tad disappointing, because obviously you don't want to hoard all the talent, but you also do want to hoard all the talent at the same time. Because I just think he'd be a fantastic player for Liverpool. Where do you see him possibly ending up? Do you think he ends up at Bayern Munich, even with kind of that resentment of them poaching a lot of the top German talent?
Yeah, so I'll give Bayern a little bit of help. So they don't. So Dortmund buy more players from the Bundesliga and Bayern Munich. Bayern tend to do it very, very well. So they'll either get a player to run down his contract and get him for free, but it's Dortmund that will normally hoover up most of the talent. If you look at them, Thorgan Hazard.
That's a very good point. They get away with a bit of murder, don't they? Really?
Yeah, they do, and they do it quite well. But I mean, Havertz could literally choose whatever club he wants to go to at the minute. He's playing that well. He can play midfield areas. He can play off the right hand side or left hand side if he really needed to. And he's also developed into this false nine since the Bundesliga's return. So, if you want a versatile player, he's the man. Which obviously makes me laugh even more, because not only is someone valuing a €100 million player at 50 million, or a £100 million player at £50 million. He's also mega versatile and shown that he can play in a false nine role. So, that will add another 10, 15, 20 million to his price tag. So, for United or someone to write that they thought Manchester United could get him on the cheap, I think, is there to sell advertising space and clicks, I think.
Even the fact that he's, I believe, the first German goal scorer to get a certain number of goals under 21, that's going to add an extra premium on top. And as much as I do want him at the club, I don't really see it being a feasible move. And these guys know I've been screaming Kai Havertz for quite some time. I really, really want him, but I don't see who he displaces in the team. I don't see us having the money ready there to spend on him, or being willing to spend that level of money for someone who's going to sit on the bench.
Yeah, I think Liverpool were happy to spend money. I just think they're happy, or they're not happy to be like bent over a barrel. They do their business very, very well. And if a player is worth 100 million, they'll try and get him cheaper. And I don't think that makes them cheapskates. I think it makes them good businessmen, trying to find the best way possible. I know people go, just spend the money. Well, you can't just spend the money, because they spend 100 million on one player, and then it's like, get the next player for 100 million. Before you know it, you spent 300-400 million. And whether we like it or not, there is financial fair play still in the system, and it probably will stay in the system unless Manchester City can win their appeal. And if they do win their appeal, then FIFA financial fair play might be blown apart, and you can go and spend whatever you want. But at the moment, Liverpool need to buy sensibly in order to be able to balance the books properly.
I guess just the last thing in terms of transfer talk. Obviously, we're going to be operating this next transfer window in a COVID-19 scenario, and then subsequent ones in a post-COVID-19 world. What do you think that does in terms of actual player evaluations? Because we've seen, I think the correct word for it probably would be hyperinflation in terms of evaluations and transfer moves. I mean, I think we've said before, and the new £30 million move is around £60, £80 million for a player. Do you see that possibly resetting to what it was pre-Neymar, or do you see it staying at the same levels as it is at the moment?
I think it all depends on whereabouts in the world you are. So I think some of the leagues that don't make as much money would like to see it cut. So La Liga would make a lot of money, but it goes to the top two. The rest of the clubs don't have the money to counter on that. Pretty much the same in Italy. England is very lucky because the money's distributed a little bit more equally, although the top six want to change that. I would think that the bubble's probably burst, and it needed to burst because I don't think any player's worth £200 million or 200 million euros. I think it's unachievable in the long game. All it does is push up prices for everybody else. So, you guys want to go to match, all of a sudden your ticket costs £75. The hot dog outside costs £6.80. You want a drink inside, it costs £5.20 for a Coke. That's how they get all the money back, and it's unachievable in the long run. And you get clubs who are spending 105% of their income on wages, and that's not sustainable either. So I would say that it will affect it. In the long term, I think we'll see prices come down. But in the short term, clubs don't want to lose money. So you won't see Jadon Sancho leave Dortmund for 50 million. You won't see Kai Havertz leave Leverkusen for 50 million. Real Madrid won't think they can get Sadio Mane for 50 million. There's going to be short term, there's going to be no change. But I think long term, football will have to change because I think we've all seen how tied into money it is with television rights. The teams in France look like they're not going to get their television money, and there's going to be a little bit less television money and sponsorship money coming in because of behind closed doors, etc. So I think football will change. It might just stay at the limit it's at and then come down. I can't see it going up and up and up, which it was, carrying on. It would have looked at, had this not happened, how much would have Mbappe gone for? Probably more than Neymar, and that's unsustainable for most clubs in the world.
Just sticking on the topic of Sancho, we're seeing a lot of young players now, I guess, making statements by way of celebrations, and we've seen them more recently. Sancho and I believe Thuram as well have made gestures. I wouldn't like to say political statements. I think I think what I'll say is gestures, and as we know, the rules mean that if they take their shirt off or make these specific gestures, they could get a yellow card. I'm not sure whether or not that's up to the discretion of the referee or whether or not that's just the law in itself. But as far as some of these political-based gestures for humanitarian reasons, do you think that should be a reason for them to look at the cases on a case-by-case basis, or do you think it should be up to the referees to be to put together some sort of discretion around some of these, I'd say, political gestures?
Well, I think we have to take it like case by case. So everything that's gone on this weekend, needed to go on. I think people say you should keep politics out of football. I personally think the two are linked. If you look at German football, for instance, there is consistent protests on the side, anti-homophobia, anti-racism, anti-sexism. German fans are very, very vocal. Dortmund do a lot for inclusion of refugees, for kicking out, Nazis that may still be, or that Nazi mindset that may still be in Germany. Nazi Raus is a big movement in Germany. Nazis out still because the coming back of the right wing, and it's not just in Germany, it's all across Europe, and especially we're seeing it in America at the moment. As we're recording this, America is burning, and it's in a real sad situation. I think players have got a platform, and they're young men and they feel very strongly about that, and they want to use that platform to push not just their ideals, but ideals that they think the rest of the world should have. So Jadon Sancho, Thuram, Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams last night had something written on his boots as well. I think that players should use this, and it should be allowed's the wrong word because it's such a serious issue. I think Jadon Sancho got booked. This has been misrepresented in the UK a lot. Jadon Sancho got booked on Saturday for removing his shirt, which is an offence under the laws of the game. You can't remove your shirt because had it been a full crowd, and we see a shirt comes off, it gets raised around the head, and it's supposed to be unsporting behaviour. So Jadon Sancho was booked for removing his shirt. He certainly wasn't booked for the message that was on the shirt. And the DFB, the German FA rules are pretty much like the FA rules. It's quite strict. There are to be no political messages or messages of any kind written on the shirt. Now, the DFB have spoken today and said that actually, this current situation that's going on, we should be speaking out about things like this. Racial issues, you quite rightly said, it's not political, it's humanitarian. I think the only way it becomes political is when certain political parties don't see it as humanitarian. That's when it becomes political. So the DFB are looking at that. FIFA have come out, I think it was either today or yesterday, and said that in these instances, we need to call it out, because whether people like it or not, there's already movements in the game. You've got kick it out, wear the T-shirts, you stop racism. That's exactly the same sort of T-shirt that Jadon Sancho had a message written on it. It's a message to say that racism won't be tolerated. So I think we'll see a change on that. The rules in the game are there to protect the game, in inverted commas, because while we all agree with what's going on at the minute and why these young players are doing this, and why young players and clubs, we've seen Liverpool and Chelsea do it today, take a knee on social media. They're doing it for a reason. But I think FIFA are scared of maybe players who have political persuasions that would shock us all, or may start putting messages that we don't particularly like. And you have to look at certain parts in the world. There's certain parts within the Asian subcontinent where countries don't get on with each other. There's parts in European continent, Albania, Kosovo, the old Yugoslavia, where if they started writing political messages all over the shirts, there'd be a lot of problems. But I think for instances such as racism, homophobia, inclusion of refugees coming from war-torn countries, trying to make themselves a better life, I think football has got the perfect platform to open that up and let that happen and be a voice for good. And I think we're seeing that, especially the last 24 hours. The lawmakers in the game are going, actually, we should probably look at this because it's such a serious situation that can affect the whole world. America's in such a bad situation at the minute. It doesn't look like it's far off civil war, and it's a real sad situation for everybody that's living there and everybody that's having to live with everything. And this isn't the first time we've seen it. Anthony Ujah made a protest in 2014, similar sort of instance. Young black lad is killed in police custody. And the DFB said it's not allowed, but they saw how serious it was, and they gave him the lowest possible sanction, which was just a letter saying don't do it again. They didn't fine him or anything. They knew what their laws were and said, look, we understand, we still got to do something about it, so we're just going to tell you not to do it again. And hopefully this time that won't even happen.
Would you say, for instance, such as this, in terms of with the humanitarian statements as they are, would you say the German FA are more progressive than the English FA on these issues? Because, I mean, we've had instances with players in the past where they've said issues about racism. They don't really feel like they've been addressed in any form. Whereas we've had instances in Germany where they seem to be, just addressed very quickly and, action to a very quick resolution.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say Germany's perfect. There was an instance not too long ago in Schalke. Hertha Berlin player was, racially abused from the sideline. It's happened in some of the lower leagues as well. So Germany's nowhere near perfect. It's Germany's just a country like everybody else, and it's a societal problem across the world. So I think every country's got its problems. It's just about how they deal with it. I think at this minute in time, because Germany is the only country that's playing top level football, so the only one of the big 5 leagues going, it feels like it's got the whole eyes of the world looking at it, and it's taken a progressive approach. The chairman of the DFB came out today and said, we stand with all the players that are making these statements, because the death of George Floyd is something that shouldn't be happening in modern day America or modern day world. These are the sort of things that you should be looking back in time, that went on in the 50s or 40s, and thinking, God, we should never be going back there again. But for some reason, well, I know exactly what reason it is, but America's got itself back into that situation because of who it's been led by. So I think everybody needs to speak out, and I'm all for players using their platform to push out messages of any kind, be it political or be it humanitarian. You know, they've got the ability to do that. I think the problem arises is when it's something we don't like. Not saying Dejan Lovren's got any problems, but I think he liked a couple of flat earth and anti-vaccine posts, and that makes me think, okay, that's a little bit weird. And it's I mean, you know, there's problems within society for all over. So imagine the backlash if a player came out and said, actually, it doesn't really bother me what's going on in America. But then if everybody went mad, he would have recourse to say, well, hang on a minute, these are my beliefs. And Jadon Sancho can show his beliefs. Emre Can can show his beliefs. Why can't I show my beliefs? I think that's why there's been a hesitancy in the past for FIFA to allow it to happen, because once you allow one protest that everybody agrees with, you sort of give a green light for every protest, and there's going to be protests that you, I, and everybody else won't agree with. But I think in this particular instance, and because of the shockwaves that it's sent around the world, I think football will allow it, and it should allow it, and it already has. You know, anti-racism going on, probably not enough, because you listen to someone speak like Raheem Sterling, and you know, you find that it needs to be taken more on. And I think football's got a real problem because fans are tribal. And if you look back at look back now as a Liverpool fan and a Liverpool supporter and someone who's from Liverpool, I think the way the club handled the whole Suarez thing was an absolute disgrace. And you look back now, and it is a bit of a poor moment in the club's history. And not quite rightly, but you know, other fans will bring that up forever, and they'll bring it up for point scoring, not because they don't agree with it. They'll bring it up to be able to make Liverpool look bad. But that's a real bad part of Liverpool's history there. And it was good to see that. I think the way the club's operated now, had that happened now, you know, that wouldn't go on today. You wouldn't see, oh, he didn't do it, it's all Patrice Evra's fault. You know, it's victim blaming. I think we're in a different position now as a club and as a fan base and a mentality to not do that, to put the human before any colours that you're wearing, be them red, be them blue, be them yellow. So, I think clubs should do more. But I'm glad that Liverpool have moved on from such a sorry situation a few years ago.
No, I completely agree with you there. It's very much a black mark in Liverpool's recent past, historic past, if anything. And it was good to see yesterday that they acted so swiftly. You know, I think James Pearce came out with it yesterday in The Athletic to say that the initiative was led by Virgil van Dijk and Gini Wijnaldum to say, you know, this is an action that we feel very strongly about. And obviously, Ryan Bruce has felt strongly about with his very eloquently put statement on social media. And it's good to see them act on that. And there was no hesitancy to kind of take a stand, which is absolutely brilliant.
Especially with our American ties, we are expected to say something.
I think everybody should be saying something. You know, I think it's shocking what's going on in the States. And to me, it doesn't matter, you know, what your background, what your race is, what your political beliefs are. When someone does that, you know, when a policeman kneels on someone's neck just because they think he's doing something wrong because of the colour of his skin, that's something that should be shouted from the rooftops that we're not happy with. And, you know, it's such a bad situation in the States. And, you know, if anybody's got friends in America, I really feel for them in a minute, because I'd hate to be living in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, one of my friends is a Air Force Reserve, and he got kind of like a call up to kind of be on the front lines today. So that's a bit of a crap situation. But you can only, yeah, it's an understandable situation as well in terms of people revolting and whatnot. So yeah, so hopefully it gets
definitely.
Yeah, it's hopefully get resolved sooner rather than later. Yeah, bit of a weird one to kind of go into another topic after that now.
No, I think sport's got a vital role to play. You know, Lewis Hamilton straight out asking why the rest of Formula One on doing something about it. That's good. You know, me personally, I genuinely think it's terrible that these things even go on, you know, in modern day society. So, I mean, I don't really have a voice, but, you know, football players and young black athletes certainly have the ability and the power to make a change. And I'm glad to see them doing that. And I'm glad to see the teammates come on board. I'm glad to see that the sports director of Schalke, Jochen Schneider, came out straight away and said, doesn't matter what happens to Weston McKennie, we back him 100%. no matter what the league do, we back him. Emre Can came out and said he supported everything that Hakimi and Sancho did. Leipzig the same yesterday with Tyler Adams' boots, the goal celebration by Cordoba when Cologne scored. Everybody's backing it because I think they see that as such an important issue.
No, that's great to see. Again, I've got another question in terms of, obviously, with football starting up in England in a few weeks. Kind of compare and contrast the attitudes towards starting up a new season in Germany as opposed to England. One of the big kind of pushbacks from rival fans that we've kind of got a little bit of a kick out of is null and void, and the whole kind of situation of a null and void scenario, so Liverpool don't get the title. Nice
try. Nice try. So
has there been any of that sentiment in Germany at all, or has it just been kind of more of a collective effort to kind of get the season back up and running? Obviously, I know there's a different scenario in terms of relegation where the third.
So third bottom in the top league, or third bottom in any league, plays the third top in the league below, and that filters all the way down.
I've always thought that'd be a pretty interesting concept to have in.
Yeah, it is. I've been to two of them. Excuse me, I've been to two of them now. Wolfsburg were in both of them, and they won them both on two legs. Real good atmosphere because the team that's in the top league are absolutely bricking it because they're going to drop down, whereas the third place fans are like, actually, we've got 180 minutes to get promotion. So I think everyone. Well, you might have seen Union Berlin. They beat Stuttgart last season to be one of the first teams in a long time to be promoted on that the second Bundesliga team wins. So, but there's been more problems in Germany from fans about games coming back behind closed doors because I'm sure you're well aware that in Germany, clubs 50, it's called 50+1, but they're 51% owned by their members, which is normally their fans. Leipzig a little bit different. They only have 16 members, but it's all legal and above board. Bayer Leverkusen and Wolfsburg are owned by companies. So Wolfsburg's owned by Volkswagen. It's a works team. Leverkusen's owned by Bayer Pharmaceuticals. It's a works team. So they're operate a little bit differently. Hoffenheim as well.
Yeah, they're owned by the SAP. So Dietmar Hopp had put a lot of money in for 20 years into that club. Once you do that, you then automatically get the right to buy 100% of the club. So that's why that happened. But traditionally, clubs like Cologne, Dortmund, Schalke, they are owned 51% by their members. So the problems they had was, well, we own the club. We want to be able to watch it. And if we can't watch it, then you can't come back until we can watch it. But I think we all know that financially, that's there'd be no clubs to come back to, so that's why they come back. But there's certainly been no null and void crew because they don't want Bayern Munich to win the league. There's been none of that. There's been no request for null and void. The request from German fans is, you don't bring football back until we can go back because football without fans is nothing. That's been the only cause for concern. And has football come back too quickly in Germany? When they started training in early April, the country was still under pretty much lockdown conditions. Now it's a little bit different. Schools are open. You can go out. The pubs are open. I got a couple of friends in Hamburg sent me some pictures the other night. They can socially distance in a pub. Restaurants are open. Shops are open. You can go and buy clothes and trainers again. It's not just food. So they are getting back to a normal, which allows them to do that, which I think 6 weeks ago in the UK, we certainly weren't in that position. But, touch wood, hope that mid to late June we'll be in a situation a little bit like Germany is now to be able to go back to what we call non-essential business, and football's part of that. So how does it feel at the moment, kind of covering German football from a distance, ironically?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's I would love to be over there because I'm used to be over there. I can't see colleagues and friends that I've got at the moment, but it's I wouldn't like to say it's been a blessing because there's been a lot of people around the world die from a terrible virus disease. But for me personally, professionally, it's been a good time for football or for German football to be the only league coming back. There aren't that many English language speaking coverers of the game on a big scale. Not that I am on a big scale, but I've been afforded an opportunity now. I've been given a little bit of a bigger platform. So found myself doing co-commentary for Bundesliga World Feed in English language, which is, you know, great fun. I don't think that would have happened had every other league been going on, because I don't know if that would have been available to me. But yeah, it's a situation that has allowed me to do a little bit of different work. But I would rather be over there week in, or not week in, every other week, going over there. And you know, I just like traveling, so I quite happily get up at 5 a.m, go to Stansted Airport, hop on a plane. I think it's great. I love it. Get off the other side, get a train, try and order some stuff in German until they find out I'm English and stop me speaking German. But I mean, it's no different really, whether you just see more at the game than you do on television, because your eyes can go wherever they want, not where the camera or the editor in the gallery tells you where to look. That's basically the only difference. Just
a quick question for you. Have you got any like advice for any maybe people like aspiring to be in the people like me as well, people like aspiring to be in the media industry or sports like journalism industry? Like, what's your advice to people like me?
Don't take no for an answer. Is probably the best one. So, you know, get out and meet as many people as you can. You know, I know it's hard if you're not in that position to be able to do that. Just start writing, and obviously you're doing the right sort of thing, podcasting, etc. You know, getting experience and getting to know how the system works. But I mean, it is quite closed in the UK, which is one of the reasons as well why I think I've been able to maybe get to be able to cover matches live quicker, because Germany's a lot more open. And I mean opening, you can just apply to clubs. There's no, in the UK, in order to cover Premier League games, you've got to be Data Crow accredited. You've got to be either part of a big newspaper or outlet to be able to do that. So just try and get as much experience as you can, and don't take no for an answer, but be prepared to take no, because people will say no to your pitches, or people will say no to articles you want to write. Some will say yes, but yeah, it's hard work. People expect you to work for free, or for virtually work for free at times, and obviously that, you know, doesn't pay the bills. But then you also have to trade that off, where, you know, sometimes it's good to do stuff where you're not getting paid, because it gives you a platform to speak, or you might just be interested in the people who you want to talk with, and it depends what you're doing. So I'd say if you're doing something like writing, don't sell yourself for free. But if someone says, can you come on our podcast and chat, then don't expect to get paid, because you won't get paid, because, you know, we're just having a chat now. I'm not really doing any work as such. We're just chatting about football. So you need to know where the line is between working and chatting. And don't sell yourself cheap, and yeah, just keep going, and you know, hopefully you'll get there.
Thank you.
That's brilliant advice. Obviously it's the 1 year and 1 day anniversary of Liverpool securing the 6 European Cup. I think literally this time last year I was on the way back from Liverpool, or I was in Liverpool.
10:10. I think I was. So I got a train into the city from where my dad lives, and then I couldn't get a train back because the queues were so big. Because everybody wanted to go home.
So I was coming up from Wolverhampton, getting up fine, and then the hordes of people trying to get back on trains was just absolutely madness. I thought, you know what, it'd be easy to get something to eat and then get on a train. But
that's what I did. There's a lovely Brazilian restaurant where they just bring meat round and carve it at your table. I took my lad in. We sat down. It was great. And I said, I can't believe we've got a table in here so quick. Because everywhere else was queuing out the door. And then when they brought the bill over, I knew why we got a table so quick. It was pretty expensive, but it was nice. And you know, obviously we had a great day, so didn't care. But yeah, a year and a day.
Yeah, it's weird. Obviously, so much has changed. Liverpool had come off an amazing season from that final, gone on to be even more of a juggernaut than they are now. So I just want to share everyone's kind of best memories from that game more than anything. So Mark, let's start off with you. I see you smiling there in the corner.
So as I always say, I was in Madrid. That was probably the best holiday of my life. I didn't even know the parade was the next day, so I ended up I went solo. I was supposed to go with my boss from where I was working at the time.
Yep.
And at the time, he wasn't able to book the Monday off. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to book it and then you can book it whenever you want after. He didn't end up booking it, ended up flying out by myself, met a couple guys on the plane who were Liverpool fans. I was on a plane with completely Tottenham fans. I've got videos of them singing and just having a blast, which was annoying to hear, but it was good to be in that environment. You know, when you're just around football fans and just have good vibes, because there was no ill intentions towards them at all at the time anyway. And it was a really, really good vibe where I was. I don't remember seeing the penalty incident. I was plastered by that time. I remember someone jumping on the table, and he was already wearing a shirt that had 6 stars on it, and he was already pointing to the stars. But I feel like what I remember the most was Origi's goal. I think by that time, we basically settled down a little bit more. There was a bit more anxiety. We weren't really chanting as much. And then the ball dropped to Origi, and the pub where I was at went completely silent. He hit it left foot and it went to the bottom corner. Then we went nuts. Like someone flipped the table. I don't even know where my drink went. And after that, the night was a blur. I just remember waking up in some Madrid square with Vuvuzela just blowing that away. And like I always say in these finals, I'll never trade the moment. So I'll never take the 3-3 and do anything different. I would never take the 2-0 and do anything different. I love the way it played out.
There's some massive moments in that game as well. Just rewatching it last night. I think it goes under the radar, Virgil van Dijk's man of the match performance for a start.
Alisson as well, to be honest.
Alisson was brilliant. That save he made off Eriksen's free kick.
Yeah. Ericsson Lucas in quick succession.
Mm-hmm. Just insane. I think it's a weird one as well. It's like I think it's just the typical Liverpool fan in me. I've never been so confident for a final where I was like, we're definitely going to win. Especially coming after the heartbreak of the previous year. I don't know what it was. It was just something.
For me personally, I think it's because it was Tottenham. If it was any other team, I feel like, and I always say this to people, I feel like Ajax could have beaten them. I feel like they play a different style of football that would have been more of a challenge to us. But we know how Tottenham play. We play them year in, year out. And they brought in Harry Kane. They could have kept him on the bench. They'll play really, really well without him. And I feel like that disrupted a lot of their rhythm. So as soon as I saw Harry Kane playing, I was like, yeah, match is done. Obviously, the anxiety was still there throughout. And as a Liverpool fan, you panic anytime someone gets close to goal. But now that we have Alisson being so assured and we have Virgil at the back, we have so many pieces of the puzzle now. I feel like that settled my nerves a little bit more. And I'll be completely honest, the drink helped a lot. I was blasted. The drink helped a lot.
Yeah, my favorite part of that the whole Champions League run at the end was essentially Divock Origi turning to the Undertaker.
I have a question for you, Chris. So for me, the Champions League win represents quite a bit for each fan. I wanted to find out from you what this particular win, what that meant to you as a fan. And I know you've been a fan for God knows how long, but I think
I'm not that old.
I think it's been a while since we've had anything to be happy about. I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on what that final win, what that actually meant to you and your family per se.
So it was a relief. So I'd been to the last 3 European finals. I didn't go to Dortmund in 2001 because I was working. I didn't go to Istanbul in 2005 because I was working. But the 3 after, I went and we lost them all. And I remember when we got through to the final after we beat Barcelona. So I worked every game in the Champions League for both those seasons. And once we beat Barcelona, and my mate sent me a text message and he said, I won't say the exact word because the podcast will be explicit, but it was, stay at home, you see, you're not coming with us this time. So that was it. So I stayed at home and I went and met up with some other friends and some school friends and we had a barbecue and I was there with my son, which was great, and my wife and my daughter. But it was relief for me. I remember once Salah scored the penalty, like that made me more nervous than anything because I'd seen Liverpool, especially after Sturridge. I'll take this to my grave. Daniel Sturridge's goal against Basel I was right behind it. I saw the curl go round and I saw the curl go in, and it's one of the best goals I've ever seen live. And I knew when that ball hit the net, I thought we were going to win. And when Salah scored, I thought, not again. I can't take this again. So when the ball came to Origi and he finished it, the house I was in went mad. My son went mad. My friends went mad. All my friends' wives went mad. His mum and dad were there in the 70s. They went mad. I was just like relieved. I was probably the calmest I've ever been, because for me, it was like the end of a journey that I'd seen end badly so many times. And I think it was until the next day that I was like, went to the parade. I was really like emotional and really, really happy about it. But yeah, and I think I can look back now and I can watch it. And yeah, when Matip's flick lands to Origi, and for me, it's his celebration. He's like, he celebrates like I would if I knocked a ball past him in the garden.
Calm? He's just so calm. He's like, yeah.
He's just like that. He's just like arms out. He's literally won the Champions League for Liverpool in like the dying minutes.
So calm.
My shirt would come off, my shorts would come off, my boots would be into the stadium. Yeah, but he just strokes it home, and I think that's like, there's probably, I think it had to be him to score that goal for his performance against Barcelona and for what he'd done, especially against Newcastle in that late game, that late goal against Newcastle as well. I think it was fitting for him to do that, because, I mean, you talked about the German relegation. It was only 18 months before that I watched Divock Origi playing a relegation playoff in Germany for Wolfsburg, and then for me to watch him score the winning goal in the Champions League final, I think that was brilliant for him. But yeah, it's that celebration that I like to see, and I love seeing it now. And yeah, the day after was very special, but at full time it was just relief. That, like, thank Christ we haven't, and thank Christ we've won a trophy as well.
I feel like it's so nice for so many rhetorics to culminate in that win. So the Divock Origi story that you just mentioned, the fact that Klopp was always regarded as a nearly man, the fact that we were always regarded as that nearly club, for us to win in such a fashion, especially after Barcelona win, was just really, really nice to see.
Yeah, it was. And I think that wonderful video that the club did of him 6 minutes after, the final whistle, where they just keep the camera running for 6 minutes. I think you can, because for him, not only did he lose the Champions League the season before, but he lost the one against Bayern Munich in Wembley as well. So, it's almost like a competition that was a millstone around his neck. So for him to get rid of that, and I think it showed everybody in that Liverpool team that the nearly season under Brendan Rodgers had gone. Liverpool had actually won a trophy that, was worth winning. Not that the FA Cup or the Europa League wouldn't have been worth winning. A trophy's a trophy, but the Champions League and the league of your own domestic, your league champions of your own domestic tier are the two things that you want to win. So Liverpool won that, and I think it took a weight off their shoulders. And I think we saw, when the season started, how that win kicked them on, and they all of a sudden thought they were invincible. And they almost were invincible, apart from one bad night in Watford. But yeah, I think we'll look back on that night as like, if you say the rebirth of the club, it sounds a bit cheesy, but I think it could be. That big momentous win that then pushed Liverpool on to win. Not only did they win that, they went and won the Super Cup. Arguably 12 months before, we might have lost that to Chelsea. Then won the Intercontinental Cup, or FIFA World Club Cup as well. It's Liverpool just started winning all the trophies that they're in for at full strength. So hopefully when the Premier League comes, I mean, I won't care. I was, 11 the last time Liverpool last won the league. I'm 42 this year, so I couldn't care if it's won in a stadium with no fans in it. I've already got my Amazon order of smoke bombs and flares for the house. So when it comes, it comes. So yeah, it's going to be a nice moment. I mean, as long as the football does come back, I would hate Liverpool to win it on points per game, because people would say you didn't really win it. Well, we did, because opposition fans have to make their mind up. They were telling me in January Liverpool had won the league, so you can't say in June that, oh no, you didn't really win the league. Well, it's not what you were saying 6 months ago. So, but it'll be nice, and then we'll get greedy. Well, we've won. Then it'll be, we've only won the league and the Champions League. Why haven't we won the FA Cup yet? But that's just part of being a football fan.
No, I completely agree. it was such a great day. It was such a good occasion to see all the hard work that the players have put in for that season and the heartbreak of the previous season kind of accumulate in that tangible moment that they can have for the rest of their lives. I mean, you saw how much it meant to James Milner and how much Klopp had instilled the six thing. I mean, for me, the six thing didn't really mean much, but you saw how much it meant to them on a personal and individual level.
Yeah. And I think, you know, you saw Jordan Henderson go to his dad and start crying because,
yeah.
you know, he'll have dreamt. I mean, I genuinely thought Liverpool would batter Real Madrid in that final. I was in Kiev for the final myself. It took me 3 days to get there, including a 18-hour train journey from Warsaw to Kiev.
Yeah,
it was horrendous.
I was going to say, how did you manage that journey? Because I remember the Anfield Rap Boys, they took a bus, didn't they? Going through various places.
So Matt Ladson, who owns This Is Anfield, he said, "Do you want to come to Kiev?" I was like, "Yeah, of course." It's like, "We're going to do it a little bit of a mad way so we can do a feature on it." I was like, "Okay, what are we doing?" He's like, "Well, we're going to fly to Warsaw." I was like, "This is in Poland." He's like, "Yeah." And then we're going to get the overnight train to Kiev. I was like, "God, for fuck's sake."
Mm-hmm.
But it ended up being an adventure. It was full of Scousers. This train was. The poor train guard didn't know what hit him because as soon as the train started, everyone was drinking and cheering. But the train was, I mean, I looked out the window and there was a fella going past on a moped. That's how slow the train was. It just took forever to get there. But then to get to that stadium and, you know, the party in Shevchenko Park beforehand was just one of the best things I've ever experienced as a Liverpool fan. There was I was quite worried about going to Kiev because of, you know, the hooligan problems that they have in parts of Eastern Europe. But on the day, the final itself, it was one of the nicest cities I've ever been to. And I got into the ground and I was like, we're going to absolutely batter these 4-5-0 because of the way we play. And I think Madrid had bricked it. But the minute Ramos fouls Salah and he goes off, I think I was like, oh, God. And I think everybody knew that as well. Even though Mane gets that goal at the end that I was at the Liverpool end, you know, what happened after, it was just great to see Liverpool finally, you know, win that competition 12 months later. And I think it showed like a mental resolve that very few clubs have. I mean, there's not that many teams who've done it, who've gone on and been beaten and then gone and won it this season after. You know, Bayern Munich have done it. There's a lot of sides that haven't done it. You've got sides like Valencia who went to back-to-back finals and didn't make it. Juventus have done something similar as well. So to lose and then to go on and win it the next season shows a great mindset. And, you know, I'm glad it's Liverpool.
No, I completely agree. We've got a few listeners' questions for you, Chris, if you wouldn't mind answering a few. This one comes from co-host of the pod, Fahi. So he has...
So I hope he's all right. He's not well, is he? So been speaking to him all week and now he's not well. So I get better soon. I hope he's better soon.
He dropped me a voice note earlier on. He was sounding a bit nasally, but I think it's just hay fever pushed him a bit of a loop. But yeah, hopefully he get better soon, Fahi. You know.
Yeah, man.
So he wants to know your thoughts on Marko Grujic that we covered a little bit earlier, and obviously we have a Nigerian striker on loan at Mainz, Taiwo Awoniyi. So how have they performed this season and predictions on where their futures lie past the summer?
Yeah, Grujic, I think we pretty much discussed earlier. I think the Liverpool he joined isn't the Liverpool he's at now, so that's going to be a difficult one for him. But Awoniyi's a really exciting player. He came on the other week and scored, and he came on as I co-commentated a game for Bundesliga Wilfried, Mainz against Leipzig, where Leipzig were great, but he got an appearance for Mainz and came on, and he looked really energetic and he looked hungry when he came on. It's a challenge for young players especially a young forward, because, you know, I wouldn't fancy being a young forward at Liverpool because look at who you've got to try and displace. It's a gargantuan task. I would probably think that another couple of seasons on loan because he's only so young, and then, you know, if he's good enough to make that grade at Liverpool, he'll get that opportunity under a coach like Jurgen Klopp. He just needs to prove himself in a league which is competitive, and he's at a club that Klopp knows well, Mainz. He knows that they look after young players, so yeah, he's perfectly positioned to come back to Liverpool at some point and try and kick on.
For those of us much like ourselves, who might not do loan watch in terms of players going out, in terms of player profile, who would you kind of compare him to?
I think it'd be difficult because he is such an individual player. He's very fast on the ball. He's got good feet. He reads the game very well. So if you see his goal he scored, he was able to analyse where the ball was going to come in and pull off the defender's shoulders. So for me to say, oh, he plays a bit like Mane or he plays a bit like Firmino, I think would be unfair on him. Just that he's an exciting attacking player. And he's only young, so I wouldn't like to give him a label anyway. He just plays the way he plays. And hopefully it'll be a good fit at some time. But he probably... sort of similar to a Curtis Jones, just a young, exciting player who seems to have no fear.
That's actually who the next question is about. So this is from Greg. He says, with Adam Lallana...
Sorry, my dog's come to see me. Go on out. Go on out. Go on. Yeah, go on, sorry.
No, not a problem. So with Adam Lallana seemingly moving on to Leicester in this in the summer, that's been reported. Do you see Curtis Jones as the mainstay to kind of step up and take his minutes for next season?
Well, I'd hope he gets a little bit more minutes than Adam Lallana. But, I mean, yeah, Curtis Jones is an exciting talent. Obviously, he's a local lad. I think that helps as well because Klopp's, he's very much into bringing young players that know the identity of the club, be that Trent Alexander-Arnold or Curtis Jones. So, and he looks a very grounded individual. That coconut water advert he came across as quite funny, with him going on about his goal. But yeah, I'd expect him to get more minutes. And I think this is why Liverpool not need to take the cup seriously, but they need to be able to give the likes of Curtis Jones time and game time in that. And it's a bit of a trade-off because you're not going to win a competition with your second team, but you need to be able to give them a guaranteed chance. So I'm hoping he gets more minutes in a couple of Premier League games. If Liverpool win the league early doors in when the football comes back, I'd hope that he gets quite a lot of games in the ones that are left. If Arsenal can do Liverpool a favour and then Liverpool can win it against Everton, I'd like to see some of these young lads get their chance in the games that are remaining.
Completely agree. Just with that Everton game, obviously, I know there's been the talk about neutral venues. Do you see that game possibly being played at Goodison?
Well, yeah, I can't see why it shouldn't be played at Goodison. I think football fans get a bad rep, and I think unfortunately there's areas within the police that still think it's 1970, 1980 when there was a problem. But football fans are regular, everyday people. They're you, they're me. They're people who work in a supermarket. They're doctors. They're lawyers. They're people who are looking for work. They're people who've got work. It's not one particular type of player, one particular type of person. If you're a football fan, you probably work in a shop or you're just a normal member of society. So to say that everyone's going to turn up at the ground unannounced and want to get in and be an arse about it, I don't think you can say that. People will try and do that, but they're the same people that went to the beach the other day. They're the same people that have been going in and out of other people's houses, as this has been going on. There'll be people who'll do what they want, and that's not because they're a football fan, it's because they're a human being.
Completely agree. This is a question from Matty. He says, do you potentially see Divock Origi or Xherdan Shaqiri being used in a Timo Werner deal? In terms of with swaps potentially being on the table, especially when the club's when the finances are a worry for the club.
No, I don't see either of them two being used because they don't fit the Leipzig style. So, whilst I do like Divock Origi, he wouldn't fit. He wouldn't fit RB Leipzig, and he certainly wouldn't be a replacement for Timo Werner. He had a little bit of a struggle when he was in Germany at Wolfsburg, probably because he played under 3 different head coaches because they had a similar poor time to what Hertha Berlin have had. So he did play under 3 different coaches, Origi, but he didn't set the world alight. And I think he's a really good impact player. I think what he did in the Champions League final, he does very well. What he did against Newcastle, obviously he came into that game against Barcelona and played wonderfully well because he had to. So he's got that ability, but I don't think he fits Leipzig. And Shaqiri definitely isn't the Leipzig player. He doesn't fit the right model. I think if they were going to look for a swap deal, for Naby Keita, they had their eyes on Trent Alexander-Arnold, so they know who's a good youth player. So if Liverpool wanted Timo Werner, and this swap deal, I wouldn't be surprised to see Leipzig say someone like they want Curtis Jones or they want Brewster or they want Harvey Elliott or someone like that. And if you ask Klopp, I don't think he's prepared to let any of them 3 go, like he wasn't prepared to let Trent Alexander-Arnold go.
Yeah, hands off the boys. All three of them are off. Don't want to hear anything from you lot.
Yeah, let them go. You could let Curtis Jones go, but it would have to be some sort of deal like Manchester City have got with Borussia Dortmund. So any offer that comes in, we can match it. It'd have to be that for me.
I think there's a bit of a curious case around Jordan Shaqiri at the moment. I don't know if it's down to injuries or just him being completely out of favour at the club. Do you see him moving on for good if the right offer comes in this summer?
Yeah, I do. You might have noticed that he all of a sudden got quite a lot of hair. So I think it's quite well known that he had a hair transplant. I don't think that went down well with the club, not because they don't want people to have a hair transplant, but because of, it takes a while for your head to recover after that. And there's certain things you can't do, like head of football, which are quite critical when you're a footballer. So I think Shaqiri's time might be up at Liverpool because I don't think he had the availability to go on and play. But he was very good in short bursts when he first arrived and he came on. Thought he was pretty good, but I don't think he's at the level that Liverpool need at the moment. And although, he's another player that had a really good game against Barcelona. So you can't have 15 Mohamed Salahs or 16 Sadio Mane's there. You've got to have players of all different ability. But I could see Shaqiri moving on in the summer, especially if someone like Timo Werner comes in. And don't forget there's Minamino as well, who offers a little bit more than what Shaqiri does. So you've got players like that who are trying to find their place in the squad as well.
No, I completely agree. I think that's a good stopping point for us to wrap up. Sorry. Just got a text from my mate Kev, who's a Wolves fan, and he says, "Would Rashica be a good fit there?"
Yeah, he would. I'd like to see Traore at Liverpool. I think he's a wonderful player. Real powerful asset. And I think he's a lad that enjoys playing football. I think he'd fit Liverpool's system. Could imagine seeing him on the left or right, just tearing the way he does. I mean, his build, he shouldn't be as fast as he is, but he is, and he's a really exciting player. And so if your mate from Wolves wants to let us have him, you can have Rashica if he wants.
I'll let him know. I think he's very precious over. He's precious over two players, Adama Traore and Raul Jimenez.
They're the two best players they've got. Yeah. So I'm not surprised.
Which makes sense. Chris, is there anything you want to plug, writing wise, presenting wise, that might be coming up?
No, not really. Just no. Pretty much the back end of the season. If you want to hear my overinflated opinions, then feel free to follow me on Twitter. Or you want to see pictures of my dogs, feel free to follow me on Twitter. But that's where my writing will be.
I think we all have a good dog shot on here, so that's good. Boys, thank you so much for joining me this week on this week's episode of KOP and Fracas. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at KOP and Fracas, and be sure to keep up with the wider conversation using the hashtag TouchlineFracas. From all of us here, have a great week, stay safe, and we will see you next week.
Peace.